The day began like any other at the charming downtown cafe, where Clara worked double shifts to save for her college tuition. Her hands, though often weary, carried a grace that matched her warm smile. At just 22, she had learned to find joy in little things, the sound of clinking cups, the soft jazz that played in the background, and the way sunlight filtered through lace curtains, painting golden stripes across the tiled floor. That morning, as she adjusted her modest necklace, a small heart-shaped locket that had belonged to her late mother, she didn't. T realized that a simple piece of jewelry would soon unravel a story of lost fortune, hidden family ties, and the tears of a billionaire grandmother sitting quietly in the corner booth. Asterisk Eleanor Windsor. The elderly woman at that corner table was known across the country for her wealth and influence. The 80-year-old billionaire had founded one of the largest luxury fashion empires decades ago. Yet she preferred solitude to grand parties. That morning, dressed in an elegant beige coat and pearl earrings, she stirred her tea absently, lost in memories of the granddaughter she had lost 20 years earlier in a tragic house fire. Her driver had insisted she eat breakfast before her meeting, and reluctantly, she agreed. As she glanced around the cafe, her gaze landed on Clara, whose cheerful presence instantly softened the air. There was something hauntingly familiar in her face, a glimmer that made Eleanor's chest tighten. Asterisk Clara approached Eleanor's table with her usual politeness, holding a notepad and pen. "Good morning, ma'am. Would you like to try our special croissant today?" she asked, her voice gentle, slightly trembling from exhaustion, but bright with sincerity. Eleanor looked up, surprised by the young woman's warmth. "You remind me of someone I once knew," she murmured softly. Clara smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. As she did, the golden locket around her neck caught the sunlight. The elderly woman froze, her teacup shaking slightly in her hand. Her eyes widened as the locket swung gently, a heart-shaped pendant with a small engraved rose. Asterisk Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. That locket wasn't just familiar, it was identical to the one she had given her daughter Amelia on her wedding day. Her mind raced back to the night she lost them both in the fire. The night that shattered her family and turned her into the reclusive figure the world now knew. "Where did you get that necklace?" she asked, her voice trembling with urgency. Clara looked startled by the sudden intensity, but answered honestly. "It belonged to my mother. She said it was the only thing she had left from her family." The cafe seemed to fall silent as Eleanor's fingers gripped her teacup tighter. Her breath shallow, the world spinning around her. Asterisk the locket's design was unmistakable. Only two had ever been made, one for Eleanor and one for Amelia. The engraved rose symbolized love and strength, the family crest passed down through generations. Eleanor's mind flooded with memories, Amelia's laughter, her wedding dress, her soft promises of building a life filled with love and humility. And now this young waitress, kind, graceful, and gentle, was wearing that very heirloom. Could it be possible? Was this girl somehow connected to the family she thought she had lost forever? Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes, and for the first time in decades, the billionaire felt something she thought had died long ago: hope. Asterisk Clara noticed the elderly woman's sudden emotion and placed a comforting hand on the table. "Ma'am, are you all right?" she asked softly, concern etching her face. Eleanor tried to steady her voice. "My dear, could I see your necklace up close?" Clara hesitated for a moment, then nodded, unclasping the delicate chain and handing it over. Eleanor held the pendant in her trembling hands, turning it over carefully. On the back, faintly engraved, were the initials A.W., Amelia Windsor. Eleanor gasped audibly, covering her mouth as tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. "This was my daughter's," she whispered. Clara's brows furrowed, confusion mixing with awe. Asterisk, "I don't understand," Clara said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "My mother told me her parents passed away when she was young." Eleanor looked up, her eyes glistening with both disbelief and recognition. "What was your mother's name, child?" she asked, voice quivering. "Amelia," Clara replied softly. The name hit Eleanor like a thunderclap. The cafe seemed to vanish around her. Every sound faded as reality settled, and this wasn't coincidence. This young woman standing before her, polite and humble, was her granddaughter. Oh, my heavens, Eleanor breathed, her hands shaking violently. You're my granddaughter. My sweet Clara. Clara felt her heart pound in disbelief. That can't be true, she whispered, stepping back. My mother never told me, she never said. Her voice broke. Eleanor reached across the table, her frail hands grasping Clara's firmly. She must have wanted to protect you, she said gently. There was so much pain, so much loss. But you're here, alive, and that's all that matters. Around them, other customers began to watch quietly, sensing something extraordinary unfolding. A hush fell over the café as two generations reunited under the soft morning light. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she finally understood the weight of the locket she had worn her entire life. Asterisk. Eleanor stood and embraced Clara, her tears wetting the young woman's shoulder. I searched for you for years, she whispered. I thought you were gone forever, Clara sobbed softly, overwhelmed by the truth. I thought I had no family left, she said, her voice cracking. The staff and customers watched in quiet awe, many wiping tears from their eyes. It was as if time itself had stopped to honor this reunion. Eleanor promised right there and then to make up for the lost years to ensure Clara never struggled again. For the first time in decades, she felt peace blooming in her heart. Asterisk by the time the sun rose higher, painting the café in warm gold. Eleanor and Clara sat side by side, talking endlessly. The billionaire's car waited outside, but she had no intention of leaving without her granddaughter. Come with me, she said softly. Let me show you where you truly belong. Clara hesitated, glancing around the little café that had been her whole world, but then smiled through her tears. As long as we stay together, she replied. And so they walked out hand in hand, the morning light casting long, hopeful shadows behind them. What began as an ordinary day ended with a miracle, a heart mended, a family restored, and a love that outshone even the grandest of fortunes. Later that evening, as the city lights of Paris shimmered against the Seine, Eleanor sat quietly in her grand townhouse beside Clara. Still trying to process the emotions of the day, the walls around them were lined with portrait paintings of generations of Windsor women, all dignified and proud. As Clara's eyes wandered, she stopped in front of one. The woman in the portrait looked exactly like her mother, only younger and dressed in an elegant 1950s gown. That's her, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Eleanor joined her side, tears welling once again. Yes, she said softly. That's Amelia, your mother, my daughter. I painted that portrait myself when she turned 20. Clara touched the frame gently, her fingers brushing over the golden edge as if she could feel her mother's presence through it. Asterisk. Eleanor turned toward Clara and smiled faintly. She had your kindness, your same spark in her eyes. She dreamed of a simple life, even when she could have had everything. The two women stood in silence for a while, letting the weight of memory fill the room. Then Eleanor took Clara's hands in hers and said, You must never hide who you are again. You come from a line of women who built this world with love and resilience. Clara nodded, her tears falling freely now, her heart both heavy and light. The city outside buzzed softly with the hum of life, but in that grand old home, time seemed to pause, allowing to hearts, once broken and distant, to finally heal in the warmth of truth and belonging. The next morning, the golden rays of sunlight poured into the large Victorian-style dining hall, where a long table had been set for breakfast. The smell of freshly baked croissants and brewed coffee filled the air. Clara, still wearing her modest clothes from the café, sat nervously at the edge of the table, unsure if she truly belonged in this world of luxury. Eleanor, now dressed in a soft lavender gown with pearls around her neck, noticed her hesitation and smiled reassuringly. You are family now, Clara, she said gently, gesturing for her to sit beside her at the head of the table. Household staff, once accustomed to serving guests of nobility, now watched curiously as the young waitress who had once struggled for tips was treated like royalty. Asterisk. Eleanor reached across the table and poured Clara a cup of tea herself. Your mother would have loved to see this, she said softly. You have her strength and her grace. Clara looked up, her eyes glistening with emotion. I don't know if I deserve all this, she murmured. Eleanor took her hand firmly. You deserve this and more, my dear. Life doesn't measure worth by wealth, but by heart, and you've shown more of that than most people I've ever known. As they began breakfast, Clara noticed something different. For the first time in years, she felt peace. The walls no longer looked cold or distant. They seemed alive, filled with warmth and connection, as though her mother's spirit lingered there, smiling upon them both. Later that afternoon, the grand mansion buzzed with quiet conversation as Eleanor's lawyers and family members gathered in the study. Clara stood silently by the fireplace, her fingers nervously tracing the pendant of the old necklace that had started it all. One of the lawyers, a tall man with silver-rimmed glasses, opened a leather folder and cleared his throat. "Mrs. Beaumont," he began respectfully, "the inheritance documents have been reviewed and updated, as per your new instructions." The older woman nodded firmly, her expression calm but resolute. "Yes, everything will go to Clara. She is the rightful heir." A stunned silence fell over the room. Several relatives exchanged shocked glances, their faces tightening with disbelief and envy. Clara's eyes widened in confusion. I don't understand," she stammered, stepping closer. Eleanor smiled tenderly, her eyes glistening with both sadness and joy. "You carry my daughter's blood, Clara. Everything that was hers should now belong to you." The room grew tense as a younger woman, Eleanor's niece, rose abruptly from her chair. "You're giving the estate to a waitress?" she demanded bitterly. But Eleanor remained composed, her voice soft yet powerful. "To a granddaughter who showed me kindness when no one else did." The lawyer nodded and signed the final page, sealing the decision. Clara stood frozen, torn between gratitude and disbelief. As Eleanor reached for her hand, the old woman whispered, "You brought my heart home again, my dear." Clara's tears fell freely, glistening in the golden light of the room, a moment where love outweighed legacy, and family transcended fortune, as the evening sunlight streamed through the grand mansion's tall windows. Clara sat quietly in the garden, the golden rays wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. In her hand was the same necklace that had changed her life forever. The garden smelled of fresh roses, and the distant sound of church bells filled the air with peace. She couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened the moment she had first met Eleanor. The shock of being recognized, and the truth that had unfolded like a dream. Once a humble waitress struggling to survive, she was now connected to a legacy she never knew existed. Yet, even in all this splendor, her heart remained humble, filled not with greed but with gratitude. Soft footsteps echoed across the marble path behind her. Eleanor approached slowly, her silver hair shining in the evening light, holding a small velvet box in her trembling hands. "Clara," she said softly, her voice full of emotion, "this belonged to your mother." Clara opened the box carefully, revealing an old photograph inside of a young woman who looked almost exactly like her. Her heart skipped a beat as she traced the woman's face with her fingertips. "She looks like me," Clara whispered. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as she nodded. "She was you, my dear. She was my daughter, and I lost her too soon." The silence that followed was filled with emotion too deep for words. A connection that time and pain could not erase. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began adjusting to her new life with a strange blend of disbelief and joy. The mansion, once intimidating and filled with silence, now felt alive with warmth and laughter. Eleanor made sure Clara felt like family, teaching her about her heritage, her mother's values, and the story behind every precious item that filled the old estate. Every morning they shared breakfast together in the sunlit dining room, surrounded by family portraits that now included Clara's smiling face. But beneath all the happiness, Clara sometimes sat by her window at night, gazing at the stars, wondering how her mother might have felt watching over her. That thought brought her peace, knowing that somewhere, somehow, love had guided her to where she truly belonged. One evening, a charity dinner was held at the mansion, and Clara, now elegantly dressed in a soft ivory gown, helped welcome the guests. Many of them were people she used to serve coffee to, but tonight she stood beside Eleanor as an honored guest. Whispers filled the room as people recognized her, the same waitress who once worked tirelessly behind the counter. Instead of shame, Clara smiled with quiet confidence, her eyes full of grace. When Eleanor raised her glass for a toast, she said, "Sometimes life hides its greatest gifts in the most unexpected places." "I found mine in a humble cafe," the guests applauded warmly. And for the first time, Clara felt completely seen, not for what she had, but for who she was. Asterisk, as the guests departed and the mansion grew quiet again. Clara and Eleanor sat by the fireplace, watching the flames dance. "Do you ever regret finding me?" Clara asked softly. Eleanor turned to her with a tender smile. "My dear, finding you was the one thing I prayed for every day since I lost your mother." She reached for Clara's hand and added, "You gave me back a reason to live." Clara leaned against her shoulder, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in her heart, a feeling that no riches could ever replace. Asterisk, the next morning. Sunlight painted the garden gold as birds chirped among the rose bushes. Clara wandered outside, barefoot on the soft grass, the heirloom necklace glimmering at her neck. She picked a single rose and placed it on her mother's memorial stone near the fountain. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with love, "for guiding me here, for giving me family." She closed her eyes and the breeze carried her words into the open sky. She knew her mother's spirit was at peace, watching her from above with pride. The air felt lighter, as if the world itself had exhaled a sigh of relief. Asterisk, as years passed. Clara became the heart of the family legacy. The cafe where it all began remained her sanctuary, a place she refused to sell. Instead, turning it into a community kitchen for those in need. Every evening she would sit by the same corner table, smiling at strangers, remembering how one act of kindness had changed her destiny. The necklace still rested close to her heart, no longer just an heirloom, but a symbol of everything love could restore. In the quiet hum of the cafe, as laughter echoed through the air, Clara often looked at the door, hoping another soul in need would walk in so she could pass on the same grace that had once found her. Years later, Clara sat on the balcony of her Paris home, overlooking the glowing city lights. The world had changed, yet her heart remained as humble as the girl who once wiped tables and dreamed of belonging. Eleanor's portrait hung inside the house, her kind smile frozen in time, reminding Clara every day of the miracle that brought them together. The media had written countless stories about the billionaire grandma and the waitress. But for Clara, it was never about wealth or fame, it was about destiny, love, and how a single encounter could rewrite the script of two lonely lives. The evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine, and Clara closed her eyes, whispering a prayer of gratitude to the heavens above. Asterisk, on quiet afternoons, she returned to the cafe. Now, bustling with laughter, music, and warmth, the walls were painted a soft cream with photographs of smiling faces, children, workers, families, people whose lives had been touched by her kindness. Clara made sure every visitor was welcomed with dignity and care. When people asked about her story, she would smile and simply say, "Kindness travels farther than money ever can." She often wore her mother's necklace openly, its golden locket shining like sunlight. Inside it, she had placed two pictures, her mother's and Eleanor's, because both women had shaped her. Asterisk, one rainy afternoon, Clara noticed a young waitress struggling at the counter, her hands trembling under the weight of too many plates. Without hesitation, Clara walked up, took the plates from her, and said softly, "Take a breath, dear. You're doing great." The girl looked up in surprise, recognizing the cafe's owner. "Madam Clara, I'm so sorry," she stammered. But Clara interrupted with a gentle laugh. "Don't call me madam. Call me Clara. I started right where you are." That moment mirrored the past, as if life had come full circle, showing how compassion continues to ripple through time, touching new hearts again and again. Asterisk, as the years went by, the cafe became a symbol of second chances. People from around the world visited just to feel its magic, the warmth that seemed to live within its walls. Clara never forgot how everything began, with a simple smile, a moment of recognition, and a necklace that carried generations of love. Sometimes she would sit by the window, watching the rain fall softly against the glass, her reflection merging with the memories of the past. In those moments, she would whisper, "Love finds its way, even when we don't know where to look." The cafe glowed like a beacon of hope in the heart of the city, asterisk on her 75th birthday. The cafe hosted a celebration filled with laughter, music, and friends. Children danced near the counter, and the scent of freshly baked bread filled the air. Clara stood near the entrance, wearing a soft lavender dress, the same heirloom necklace shining brightly against her chest. A young reporter approached her and asked, "Mrs. Clara, what's the secret to a happy life?" Clara smiled, her eyes sparkling with wisdom and warmth. "It's simple," she said. "Never underestimate the power of kindness. It can change a life, even your own." The crowd applauded, and as the candles flickered, Clara looked toward the sky, whispering a final thank you to the two women who taught her what love truly means.